Welcome to 6 Habits of Highly Successful Controllers, a webinar and panel discussion. My name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the Controllers Council. And I'd like to introduce you to our sponsor, today's sponsor, Oracle NetSuite. And I want to say a little bit about NetSuite, but first I want to cover just a few housekeeping items. First, we have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so use your GoToWebinar control panel to ask questions. Next, we have 3 polling questions. Again, use your GoToWebinar control panel to vote and see how your peers vote. It's under the polls icon. And then lastly, you'll receive a link to this webcast via email in 24 hours, so no need for notes or screenshots. So with that, again, I'd like to introduce our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite, and say just a little bit about them. Leading cloud ERP system gives companies of all types and sizes the applications for finance, supply chain, CRM, HR, professional services, e-commerce, and more. A complete system for improved efficiencies and scalable for growth. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Scott Beaver.
Thanks, Neil. I appreciate that. And again, welcome to today's presentation. I'm Scott Beaver. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Oracle NetSuite. But I want to introduce Ian Larkin. He's the controller for CentralReach, and we're going to be talking today about the habits of effective controllers. And Ian's going to give us some of his real-world experience and how he applies these habits in his real life. So Ian, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, thanks for having me. My background has been primarily in accounting in software companies, and that has evolved a bit over time where we've gotten into the subscription-based model now. So in addition to all of the fun accounting activities that go on, I've also been fortunate enough early on in my career to be involved in systems implementations and kind of being able to leverage that and gain efficiencies with it, which has proved to be quite handy.
Excellent. And can you tell us just a little bit quickly about CentralReach?
Yes, CentralReach is a software provider for primarily ABA and BCBA clinicians. They are working with the autistic community, and our primary product is a practice management software to help the clinicians run their business in such a way that they can help their clients.
All right, excellent. So let's move forward. The first thing that I want to say here is that, next. All right, first thing we have is a polling question. Just like to get a sense of who our audience is today and get our comments a little bit towards that. So the question is, does your organization have both a controller and a CFO? So we'll just give a few minutes to fill out those responses. All right, so far we've got, looks like we've got 100% say yes, so that's great. That's ideal. That's what we're expecting, because it is so important to delineate between what's happening with the CFO and what's happening with the controller these days. All right, so if we can go to our next slide, please. So the controller's role, as you may or may not know, has evolved, and a lot of that is due in part to the changing nature of the CFO's role. So where the CFO originally was focused on financial reporting, that's why the role of CFO came to the forefront beginning in the late 70s, was really to focus on financial reporting primarily for public companies. But over time, that role has changed, and significantly in the last decade or two. And so now CFOs are far more involved in the strategic direction of the business. Many times they're responsible for helping drive long-term growth. They're leading change both internally and externally, and they're often one of the two faces of the company, focused more on the operational side of the business and working with the board of directors or the investment community for those companies that are public. So as that role has changed, many of the responsibilities that were once, assigned to the CFO have now gone to the controller. So that, the visibility of the controller has also increased. Their workload has increased, and the number of things they're responsible for has increased. And so in the past, a way to think about that, in the past, the controller really had sort of two roles. One was sort of a steward who was responsible for protecting assets, helping company control expenses, and the other was as the chief accountant for the organization, essentially sort of an operator role or accounting operations role. Today, that has expanded to the most effective, most successful controllers these days are also playing a role in strategy and being a catalyst or an agent for change. And so we'll talk about that here just for a few minutes. But do want to ask Ian, have you seen this in your experience as the CFO role has evolved, that you're now taking on things that you didn't maybe earlier in your career?
I definitely have seen that. While to your point, CFOs were previously a bit more involved in some of the accounting and financial reporting, these days it really is more of a focus on strategy for them. They're working on, they might be involved in new product pricing, kind of where the grand 5 or 10-year plans of things, all of that, acquisitions, lots of M&A activity in the software space. So they're looking, they need to be in a position where they're so far ahead that everybody else doesn't even know where they are. And the controller is kind of being involved with that as needed. And